Hey, hi everyone. I hope you've had a good reading week so far. I guess we're right at the end of it here. I am jumping on here today to provide a little bit of a video guide for the process of deciding exactly what you're asking archivists for, and actually reaching out and sending that email. So this video might be helpful if you are just starting out in your research process, and this is the first contact you're going to have with the archivists, but also if you've been running into issues with the process of actually getting access to the archive. If you've been sending some emails and don't seem to be getting anywhere, I hope this video will help us think about how we are narrowing and being more specific in the requests we're making to the archivists and really working towards being in that first visit accessing material. So in order to do that, I'm going to give you a little exemplar walkthrough, and I'm going to share my other screen here so that hopefully we can all see what I am doing. Okay, hopefully this works. So on my screen here, you should see I have made an incredibly basic Google search to start. I have searched UW archives, Western Libraries, Archives and Special Collections is the first thing that pops up. This is where I want to be. So I'm starting out on the website. So Leslie mentioned this to us when we were in with our visit. And there's lots of really cool information on here. I encourage you to poke around. But for the sake of this video, we're going to go right into what we want to do, which is finding archival material. So I'm going to click on this link and I'm going to get some useful information about how-tos and how finding aids work. But really what I want to know is what collections do they have? What can I access? So I'm coming down to the archives finding aids. So I'm going to browse that. I'm going to eventually click on the link properly. There we go. And so now I'm on this page, archives finding aids, and I'm getting this whole big, huge list. So each of these links would take me over to a PDF that has the finding aid for this particular collection. Some of them are preliminary, so some of these are going to be more detailed than others. You can see that these ones are marked with an asterisk, but there's all kinds here. So just looking at the top of the list, there's amateur athletics might be of interest to people, all kinds of things. There's lots of family collections, individuals. You can see Emma Donahue's collection is here. So all sorts of really interesting organizations. I will let you click through these at your leisure, but I encourage you to go through and open some of them up because you'll never know what you might find, especially just when things are listed by people's names. You don't really know what's in it until you open the archive collection. For the sake of this video, I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and I am going to click on the link for the Women's Christian Temperance Union. So for those who don't know, this was a organization that focused on arguing for prohibition. They wanted to ban alcohol as a way of dealing with substance abuse and other conditions in their communities that they saw. And I might be thinking about this for this project as a really old historical way of doing advocacy about issues that we still encounter today. We still have a lot of conversations, both kind of in advocacy circles, but in the wider world about how do we support and address the issues of substance abuse, both with alcohol and other substances in our communities. So my project might be focused on how did this idea of dealing with substance abuse in our communities develop historically. So I'm going to click on the link. It's going to download a PDF. As you can see, I've downloaded it a couple times at this point. I'm going to pop it open. I will pull the tab over here so that you can see the PDF. And this is pretty typical for what you're going to find when you open a finding aid. This is a preliminary finding aid, so it's not going to be quite as detailed as something that is a little bit more formalized. But really what we're getting is a list. We have a whole list here of what is in these boxes. So if I was preparing to go to visit this archive, or I was thinking about what I wanted to access and how I was structuring my project, you would want to do a really detailed read through of this and think about what material is here. So you can see there's a lot of minute books. There's also accounts. So I know from some of my classmates who do archival research that you can learn many fascinating things from accounts and financial records, but I know that like numbers are not my thing. So maybe I'm not going to be diving into those records. But as I keep scrolling, I'm seeing those financial records, I'm seeing minutes. But then I see a couple of things that are really of interest to me. So I am very curious about this point number 27, Temperance Lesson Manual, Hints and Helps, Ontario Women's Christian Temperance Union. So this seems to be some kind of training manual. And again, if I'm thinking about my project as something that is considering how conversations about substance use in communities have happened historically, this idea of a lesson manual is very interesting to me. I'm also seeing a little bit further down that there's a collection of uh, London Christian Temperance Union pamphlets, annual report, and convention materials for the centennial. So I'm thinking about that as something where someone else before me has done all the work of gathering all of these important materials together to celebrate 100 years of this organization. So you can see the dates are listed here as well. So that as well seems like something that would be a really good starting place. So when I'm thinking about writing my email, those are the two things I'm really interested in. I've identified what I want to learn about, which is advocacy organizations and how they have talked about substance abuse in communities historically. I've identified what organization I'm working with, Women's Christian Temperance Union, and I've started to think about specifically what materials and approach I might find based on this finding aid. So really, that's information I can get out of the finding aid. The next thing to do is reach out and send the email. Always the most nerve-wracking part. I never had a bad experience where someone emails me back and is like, no, don't bother me at an archive. But I know writing these emails can be a little bit stressful, especially because you're oftentimes reaching out to people you don't know. So I'm going to jump over to a draft email, and you are welcome to edit this as you would like, but this might be an approach that would be helpful as you are thinking about sending this email. So I've started with a pretty typical good morning. I hope this email finds you well, because that is how I start all of my emails. You may notice it if you email me for class. So the next thing that I think is useful to include, especially as undergraduate students who are kind of being made to do this for a course, I think it's useful to tell the person you're emailing that so that they know that you maybe are a little less familiar with the archival process. So for example, in this email, I have said, I am a student in Dr. Bruce Skinner's Cultures of Advocacy course, where we have been asked to research a London-based advocacy organization using archival materials. So you've identified your professor. So if the person you're emailing wants to know more about the assignment requirements or what's being asked of the course or has any other concerns, they know that they can contact Ruth, and then Ruth can always pass them along to me, and we can help provide more structure and information. You've identified the course and a very, very brief description of what the assignment is. So that really will help give the archivist a better sense of what your goal is. So the next thing I have is a very brief summary of what I am thinking about doing for my project. Again, I want to give the person reading the email a sense of what I'm trying to do so that they can use their knowledge and expertise to help me. But I'm also trying to be very aware of the fact that these are incredibly busy people, and they don't need every single detail at this stage of what my project is. So I've said, I'm researching the Christian Women's Temperance Union and have been looking at the finding aid available on the Western Archives website. So again, I've indicated the research I've done so far. I've shown that I know what material they've made available online and have gone through that. So then I said, I am especially interested in their internal training guides and the collected materials from their centennial, as I am thinking about focusing this project on how the organization taught members to interact with the public. So again, very basic summary of what my project might be as I'm thinking about it at this early stage. So really quick introduction paragraph, and then I'm moving into my request, which is this next section here. So I would like to request access to materials in box M1131 and M332. Hopefully when I was actually writing this out, I actually copied that in properly. Oh, I didn't. So this is another good lesson. Always read your emails over. Um, there we go. So I'm requesting access to two specific boxes. I've made it incredibly clear what material I want to access, and was hoping that these boxes can be pulled for me to work with as a starting point for my research, indicating that I know I might want to access further materials, but honestly, on a first visit, you're not going to get through 8 boxes of material. So identifying two is probably a good starting point. I've made the request. This is what I want pulled. I've also included another question here. So I said, I also noticed the finding aid has the header microfilm. I've not accessed microfilm before and was wondering if there are any resources you can point me to prior to my visit to the archive that might help me understand how to work with this type of resource. So this is another question or type of question that you might want to ask when you're looking at a finding aid. If you notice there's something that is confusing that you haven't worked with before, this might be a good time to ask for clarifications, that when you show up, you are in the best possible position to actually work with these materials. So when I was looking at the finding aid, I noticed it said a microfilm. So like I personally have encountered microfilm before, but my memory of like how you use those machines is that sometimes they're kind of fiddly, and I would really like a reminder. Or maybe, like I said in the email, you've never worked with microfilm before. This is information that the archivist will have, and would be able to point you to and would help you get set up for having a really successful first visit. So that is the other question I'm including in my email. What materials I want pulled, and any other information I need to be successful in my visit, which in this case is, what is microfilm? How does that work? Um, so that is the kind of like request section of my email. I will switch that back to no color. Maybe I won't. Just move on to the last section. So the last thing in the email is the um, like kind of closing. So acknowledging that we are very grateful for their help. So I said, I appreciate your help in accessing material from the Christian Women's Temperance Union, and additional guidance you might have about microfilm. Please let me know about next steps for accessing the archival material, or if there's any additional information you need from me. Because really what we're hoping for now is that the person will be able to get back to us and say, okay, it's going to take X number of days to pull that material. It will be available on, say, Thursday, and then you can start that back and forth for scheduling. And it may also be, though, that the archivist is going to read my email and be like, Ronchi, that's all well and good that you want those boxes, but I need to know specifically what roll of film you want, what specific documents are you trying to access, for example. And so there may be additional information that the archivist needs from you, but you're making this starting contact. And then closed out with my name and pronouns. So this is kind of a very basic starting email that you are welcome to copy, to adjust as you need to, but might be a good way to start making contact with an archivist. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and jump back over here for a moment. I hope this has been helpful as a way to start thinking about how you're being really productive in these emails, and how to actually get access to these collections. If your initial emails have been not getting you as far as you would like, if you're having trouble actually getting boxes pulled and being in the archives, looking at materials, you can kind of follow this process if you need to maybe resituate your project. If you're having a lot of trouble getting access to materials, it may be helpful to go look at what is already documented in the collection, to go through the finding aids on the website, open a bunch of PDFs, and just look at what's there. And maybe there is a box of something that is already documented that can be pulled for you. It will help you be much more specific for the archivists, and might be a faster way of getting into the archives to look at material. So I really encourage you to do that. This project is not asking you to discover some brand new thing that previously hadn't been documented in the archives. You're more than welcome to use those finding aids. And also just hoping that giving you a little bit of an exemplar email might help with thinking about how we're communicating with the archivists, to make their jobs easier and also to get good results for our own projects. As always, you can reach out to myself, or to Ruth if you're running into problems, if you're having any further issues. But as we move into the second half of the semester and you continue to work on these projects, I hope this guide is helpful. I look forward to reading your updates on Monday and all of your other materials throughout the semester. Bye.